Anyway, what's up? What's up? Like I said, if you're in the chat, feel free to say hello. You can confirm I'm live. Perfect. Thank you. Proof of life, I guess. This stream is okay. So put "Ask Me Anything" in the title. That is like the main point. Um, I'm also happy to go over like if you came for hey okay, so hey Ravi, hey Rob. I'll just say Rob. Um, yeah. So we can okay. So yeah, the point of the stream is the title, kind of like "Ask Me Whatever." I was going to go over old computer vision papers sort of in the background. Um, I'm also happy to do some of the regular thing. Like if we get a few people in here and that's what they're expecting, I can just go over papers from the last week. Like I'm happy to do that. But the plan is to go over old computer vision papers, which, let's boot up an incognito for this just so I'm not accidentally like I don't think there's anything crazy in the other window, but I'm not trying to like self-dox or anything. Uh So yeah, what's my PhD about? Computer vision was my PhD. I got my PhD at the University of Maryland a little less than a year ago. Since then, I've worked at TikTok, and then now I work at the MBZ UAI Institute of Foundation Models. You say you're a Professor Daniel Kramer's alum? Hold on. Oh, cool. Okay. So Slam. Like original Slam or just like a lot of focus on Slam and robotics and some. Okay, FlowNet as well. Okay. I should know this. Um, yeah, there's definitely a name. Definitely a name it. Let's look at more recent stuff. What's a more recent thing that maybe I should know? Or maybe this is why I don't. Like Slam is not my area so much. Or optical flow. But yeah, it looks like a lot of Slam. I definitely would know him if I did Slam. Geez, okay. That's cool. So you did your PhD at Munich or that's pretty cool. Okay, so someone Korchnoi asks, "Oh, so do you work in like UAE, I guess?" No. So the MBZ UAI actually has a research lab in the United States in the Bay Area, and I work there. It's called the Institute of Foundation Models. So did you work, Rob, on a more like robotics or like what would that? I mean, that would have been a pipeline to self-driving for quite a while. Like that would have been a lot of the jobs, I think. But I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, lots of other things you can do with Slam as well. And like lately, you have people doing like I think Skilled is one of those startups that's worth like what 14 billion now. Um, one robot brain to control many robots, and I know that they hire a lot of I know they hire a lot of different things, but I figure a ton of it is not just control, but also like perception and planning, which would probably involve Slam. Do you have any advice on improving ML coding skills coming from a non-CS background? Finishing up my master's in ML coming from physics, but still don't feel on par with people who did CS in undergrad. That's a great question. First off, I'll say if you're coming from physics, you have, I think, at one point in time, that was a gift and a curse. Like, you would have had probably better math background than many CS folks, but maybe you're missing some programming chops. And some problems in ML, if you wanted to force physics, you would just be wrong, and you'd be wrong all the time. More recently, there's an area sort of within ML called Gaussian splatting, where I say sort of within ML because like you learn it with stochastic gradient descent, but like aside from that, it's primitives, right? Like they're not neural networks. Um, but I've seen a lot of people apply a lot of physics ideas in that space and do very, very, very well with that. Obviously, physics, I guess, has always been relevant in 3D, right? Even with NeRF, you had the idea of like points along the ray, right? But I feel like within Gaussian splatting, especially, like pretty much any good physics grounded idea you have seems to do well there. Whereas in more of I almost consider object detection, I guess, for example, to be more like alchemy. And like some ideas that sound very good just don't work. But you could have, what I'm saying, a leg up in some ways, just applying some of that physics know-how. That being said, to kind of get your coding on par, I mean, I don't know how much coding is a bottleneck. It depends on what you mean by coding. Because, for example, like I could be watching TV at night and maybe I need a script to, I don't know, rewrite a bunch of prompts and synthesize some images and I want to do it really fast, so I want to parallelize it. So I can tell my agent that I want a script that um, rewrites prompts, HGPUs in parallel using VLLM and allocates you know, some portion of the memory to the VLM, some portion to the LLM, and 10 minutes later I have a script. I run it, there's a bug, I tell it the bug. 10 minutes after that I have a working script, and the job is done. And that kind of task, learning VLLM, which will run 2.5 times as fast for me as my flash attention to Hugging Face, that would have taken me a few days to get through the documentation, to write it, to learn like just like the nitty gritty things that make it run properly or not run, right? But these days I can just throw that off to an agent. So like it depends on what you mean by the coding, but at the same time, there's like things that I know about what to say when I want that. There's the fact that I know that I want that, right? So it depends on what you mean by like learning the coding part. To some extent too, you also need some coding just to pass interviews, right? Like a lot of places will still have you do leak code style interviews, even for an ML position. So I'd say if you're talking about that, if you're saying, I want internships, Matt, and I'm failing the ML screen, then practice leak code. If you're saying, I don't understand how to write multi-head attention, PyTorch has great tutorials on their basic documentation. So I guess it depends on like where the bottleneck is, right? Can you not implement multi-head attention because you don't know Torch, or can you not implement multi-head attention because you don't know multi-head attention, right? And so my answer just depends on that. Like, do you need to learn Torch, or do you actually need to go back to the basics, read the paper, learn the math and the architecture? So maybe if you clarify, I can give you a better answer. So Rob, you say you've been doing some learning-based localization stuff. That's pretty cool. Oh, now more into world models. Same here. Although I feel like world model has different meaning depending on who you talk to, right? Like actually, Eric Jing, the president of the MBZU AI, is having, do we say the MBZU AI or MBZU AI? I should know that because I work there. I'm new there, so I don't know the or no the. But anyway, he's doing a debate with Jan LeCun on what is world model. Because Eric has his idea around GLP, LeCun has his idea around JPA. Those are two pretty different ideas. And then some people have the idea that the video generation model itself is the world model, right? Like, I don't know if you saw, Rob, this paper from, oh geez, even my incognito is still suggesting all my stuff. Can I turn that off? Is there a way to do that? I don't know about that. Here, let me just type it in the other tab then and then copy it over. Hang on. Did you see this paper? It's actually, I looked on the other stream yesterday because it's the top paper on Hugging Face from this last week called Demystifying Video Reasoning, which this is a crazy paper to me because as far as I can tell, like I go into the paper, right? You go down to the main results or you read like the method, whatever. I'm pretty sure they're doing all of this more or less with like VBVR WAN 2.2, or like that's like the main model that we're looking at when we look at most of the cool figures. And VBVR WAN 2.2 is a model trained on VBVR. VBVR is a data set from 3 weeks ago, which makes me say, like, did they write this freaking paper in the last 3 weeks? Or did they just discover a model that worked better than all the others and then add it in? But I think a lot of the data relies on the VBVR too. I haven't checked, though. It might be that many of these authors overlap, and so they kind of had them in parallel. I don't know. But, oh, you had a great long discussion with Black Forest Labs guys and NVIDIA. We're all very convinced that video is enough. Yeah, see, Rob, that's the thing. I don't see why video wouldn't be enough, right? I used to be a guy that's like, obviously you need more, but at the same time, it's like, do pixels not represent everything? I mean, you could argue, like, is the pixel too coarse or already too discretized? But I think probably not. And then, like, all the physics is just there. And I don't know if in domain, out of domain even matters, because it's like, when you're training at a certain scale, should you not just make everything be in domain? Gather data from everything you care about, right? So I don't know. I guess at the moment, I am a pixel and video gen optimist. And I'm kind of putting all my chips in that basket, right? I switched from more like image representation and coder style learning to now I work all the time on video gen. And I even switched jobs to do that, right? So I'm hoping that video gen now is like 2023 LLM, right? We have some proof of concept. Like, I don't know if you saw this. I thought this was sick. Hopefully this brings it up from, yeah, HandLab. Fast Video. I think when they made the first post, I was seeing 4.5 seconds for 5 seconds video. But I saw something from him lately where he said, I think 5 seconds now for 30 seconds video 1080p. And that's, should we generate this? Should we just make a video? I just click create. I don't know what's about to happen. Am I going to get a video in real time? Apparently, yes. I just created this, right? Maybe I should have typed a real prompt. I kind of just mashed the button. Is this an amazing video? No. Like, do I think that this is something real or like I would pay an animator for this, no. But that's pretty freaking fast, and the quality is decent. Even the per frame, like the individual frames seem decent. So I don't know. Okay, sorry, I'm getting behind on questions because I'm yapping too much. Rob, but finished, currently exploring opportunities in Europe. Yeah, BFL is awesome. If you can join that, that'd be cool. How is it living there too, by the way? Have you visited? Because my understanding is they're like in a kind of more remote part of Germany, closer to Switzerland, right? Like, not that it's a tiny, tiny town, but it is not even one of Germany's top 5 cities, I think, right? The town that BFL is in. Hopefully you can get a job there. That'd be sick. I always like everything that comes out of there. That team seems super, super cracked. Um, Cracked being slang for just like very skilled and good. It is beautiful. Yeah. I need to go. I'm American, obviously, but like my great grandma's from Bern, Switzerland, which is kind of just like the other side of that, I think. And so I know I need to go at some point just to see like where my family comes from, sort of. Because so the fun detail about my family is they ended up settling here in the US, like around this, just because it sort of reminds them of home, just like the way that it looks, right? Because this is like within the US, I think it's hard to get mountains that look as peaky as the Alps do. And the Tetons within the Rocky Mountain range, I think, get kind of close to looking peaky, although it's not comparable, right? Okay, so more questions. Mooley, hey Matt, did you decide your first research direction for how did you decide your first research direction for publication? That's a great question. Let's pretend I don't search myself in Google Scholar every single day for a minute. Let's just pretend you don't see that in purple. Pretend it's not the top result when I start typing my name. Let's sort by year, I guess. So my first paper was this guy here. Not a very good paper. I'll say that up front. I'll be the first one to say. So I was an undergrad. This was my senior year undergrad. No, my junior year undergrad. Working with Ryan Farrell, who did his PhD at the University of Maryland, postdoc at Berkeley with Trevor Darrell, and then to the school that I did my undergrad at. And I'm trying to remember what the original idea he pitched to me was. I think it was roughly what this ended up being, which actually I think the underlying idea is kind of neat. It was basically like dataset pruning, but before dataset pruning was a thing, where I don't know if any of the figures in this paper are good enough to explain it, but we wanted to see, like the way I explain it's so bad, but basically like, could you distribute images unevenly per category to get better performance? And like, why on earth would you want to do that? Well, our argument was, you have really good coverage of birds in North America, but you have terrible coverage of birds in the Amazon. And there's way more types of birds in the Amazon than North America. So if you want a good bird classifier for like conservation efforts in Brazil, you would need to take new images. And taking new images means sending people on the ground, and then there's a question of where you send them. And so the motivating idea of this project from his perspective, which I buy, is like, how can we find out which categories we need more images for? And then based on geomarkers, could we know then where to send people or where to deploy our drop cams to collect that data? That was our idea when this was in 2020. So this idea, I think, very much came from him. I think he had the idea originally. Maybe it would have been more theoretically satisfying or more mathy. This weird, like, totally discrete, fully, like, I even did bins, right? It was either like, I would test in like sets of 5, basically. It's hard to even remember what exactly it was, but I took his good idea and made it kind of bad, but I also made it sort of work with just the empirical stuff. And I was very fortunate. The conference I submitted to is called WACV, and it has 2 rounds. I submitted to the first round. It didn't do super hot, but then I looked at exactly what those reviewers cared about, and I fixed those things and I improved the paper, and that was my first paper. My second paper, I think, is a little easier to explain where the idea came from. It was right after that. I noticed in that paper I would get so much variance across runs. And even more than variance in results across runs, there was a lot of variance at the class level, which really mattered in that paper because we're saying, what images do we need more classes for? Well, that would change across seeds. And so I was like, you really, like, it's one thing to get an error bar on the whole data set level. It's like, okay, we classify 80% on cub plus or minus 5. But what I showed in this paper is like, actually, you can get a band of like plus or minus 20 sometimes per class, especially for the harder classes, where like randomly you can have this hard class here at the tail of the data set. And like here, I'll zoom in. And like maybe for this really hard class here where we average 50, sometimes we actually get 70% for that class at test time, right? So that was the idea. Was I noticed that in the other paper, so I came here to quantify it, and I basically tried to pitch to the fine-grained visual categorization community. Maybe let's pay a little more attention to the per class, which, to be clear, always a losing argument. The way that an 8-page paper works, you're never going to convince someone that they should pay attention to 500 numbers in any capacity. And we tried to do it a bit with like literally quantifying the variance of basically standard deviation, or like these plots that sort of show the band across the classes and be like, maybe this is a good way to show it. But it's a losing argument. Still, it picked up some sites, so I guess people in the community cared a little bit. So those are 2 ideas and examples of how I got them. I gotta be quicker. I'm getting behind on the chat now. Geez. Ravia, I'd say maybe implementing anything from scratch. I think I'd struggle with, but I'm at a point now where I can read and understand code, but I feel I cannot implement without help from an LLM or someone else. I'd say you just have to do it. Like, what should be a 5-hour project for me might be an 80-hour project for you, and you just need to make yourself do it. The fact that you even say, I cannot implement without help from an LLM or someone else, implies to me that you do get that help sometimes, because you probably need it to meet deadlines or to do assignments or to deliver work. But I think you just got to bite the bullet and put in some time and pick something. Like, you could pick ResNet and just say, I'm going to read the ResNet paper and force myself to implement from scratch, and then go back and compare. Or maybe you pick like VIT. I'm using vision examples. Maybe you go look at VIT, and you won't get all transformer details, so you go back to original transformer, and you'll go to PyTorch docs, and you'll say, how do I translate this into code? You'll do your best, and then you'll compare, right? I think that's something a lot of us did naturally because we were there when it was happening at the time. You weren't there, and you also don't have that CS undergrad. You didn't have to do those ML projects, but like my ML undergrad, well, CS undergrad, but ML courses, we would like write backpropagation from scratch. If you've never written backpropagation from scratch, do it. Can I find you... UMSC CMS 472 Spring 2021. Can I find you a public link to that? I would love it if I could. This isn't going to work because I don't know that session. This one should work. Man, can I get you... I think it's just from the Stanford course, honestly, like the 2018-229. I think we use that same thing. It's just a NumPy backprop. If you've never done that, you should. And do it with like as little boilerplate as you can. And just force yourself to sit there with it. That's my main advice. Okay. Yeah, oh, sorry, Rob. I never replied. Yeah, most livable city in Germany. That's interesting. I wonder what you think about most, like, yeah, well, what makes it most livable? Is it because it's the most walkable? Because I feel in general the public transit in Germany, I've heard, is robust, no? Yeah, we talked about hiring top talent from SF to Freiburg. Yeah, that's tough. Getting people from SF out of SF, I think, is impossible. Like, I'm here in South Bay now, and if I ever move, it'll just be to be even closer to SF. Part of it is just the fear, at least for me personally. Like, I tell it to my wife all the time. Am I confident that my current job will exist for however long? No, because the market's super volatile, or like the industry's volatile. Things could happen to our literal funding source, but being where I am physically and getting things in the inbox multiple times a day, every day, like, hey, Matt, there's this offer. This is the comp. Hey, Matt, here, there's this thing. There's the comp. Do you want to interview? Do you want to, like, I know I'm in a place where I wouldn't be unemployed for more than a month unless I really want to be. Whereas if you're talking like Freiburg, what happens if what happens if you lose your job at Black Forest, right? And Black Forest is super cracked. It's a crazy opportunity, especially if you're already German or live in Germany. Like, obviously that's a great thing, but to get someone from SF where they know they have so many options out of SF is hard. By the way, how do you handle AI burnout? It's tough, Rob. Personally, I think first off, I'm not a great person to ask about handling stress. I think I handle it in a super unhealthy way. I think I have some decent ideas. Like, I think it's really important. I think some level of burnout is bound to happen. Like, you'll have deadlines and you'll push really hard and there will be a bit of a lag. I think it's really important though that your burnout cycles are like microcycles. Like, no one expects you to do something every week, mostly, unless you're at like Tesla or something. Then Elon wants to meet with you twice a week and you're just kind of screwed. But most of places, as long as you're delivering every 2 months, every month, something, that's probably fine. And so I think it's important that the burnout part of it is kind of short, like that it's a pretty short feedback loop and you're able to get up on your feet again quickly, like whatever does that for you. For me, part of mitigating it has also been just being honest with myself that Twitter is not a good place for me to be, and deleting my account and logging out from it on all devices. So I think it's important to see what like your own triggers are for that burnout, and to recognize like at what point is it like a healthy thing I have to engage with, or sorry, at what point do I have to engage, and what's healthy, and how can I balance? And for me not being on Twitter, I have the luxury of being on Twitter because I have friends that bite the bullet that are on Twitter. And if there's a cool thing, they post it in the Slack, or they post it in the group chat, or they send it to me directly, right? Like, I have a big enough network to where I'm just not going to miss something that goes viral on Twitter. And so then it's like, what am I doing on Twitter? Just getting depressed. But that answer is different for every person. I think for me too, it also helps sometimes to scope something that I feel genuinely is unique, and then just to kind of like put my head down a bit, and like, sure, it's still nice to read the papers, but my main focus is like what I'm doing. And I'm not reading the papers to like get like a pivot or something, because I believe in the thing that I'm doing. Obviously that only works if you've actually scoped something unique. It doesn't work if what you're doing is super incremental, because then you are just going to be constantly stressed about like, what's in this new paper? Could it be my thing? So it just depends. I think if you're going to pick those obvious hill climbing things, then you just have to accept that. That means you have to be fast, you have to deliver, and it's kind of like a micro burnout cycle. Sprint for a month, deliver it, rest for a couple weeks. Sprint for a month, you know. That's my current thought. I don't know though. I don't know if it's a great answer, Rob. Let me know what you think. And the stress is crazy. I'll be the first one to say, like, I think I had sort of like a panic attack 2.5 years ago, and I haven't ever like fully recovered. Like, I'll give an example. I'll be vulnerable for a minute. I used to get stressed before a deadline, but then the deadline would come and pass, and I'd be like, oh, whew, the deadline's gone. I'd feel that like relief. I haven't felt that since before CVPR, I guess technically 2024, but like the deadline was November 2023. That was the deadline before that, which I guess for me would have been NeurIPS, was the one I submitted to. After that, I was like, oh, this feels good. Never felt that again. Still haven't felt it. That's a goal I have. Feel relieved after a deadline. We'll see if I can ever manage it. But the stress is crazy. It's a competitive field. It does feel too like we're on the verge of something like truly amazing. And so it does just feel like maybe just push, 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 and like change the world. I don't know. It's tricky. If you have a better answer, anyone in the chat, let me know. Muli, nice. I didn't know dataset pruning existed until now. Sounds like an interesting problem. Is it still something researchers think about? I don't know, Muli, because when we're talking about like a lot of trends in data are mainly just how do I get more? I do think there's some transferability of principles to the idea of synthetic data, but it's more like prune before you ever generate, right? Or filter after you generate. I think the truly good regime, though, is always use your budget to generate good data. The hack in lieu of that is, how do I not feed bad samples to the model? And a good example of that is there's a paper that I worked with an intern at TikTok. I wasn't his manager. That was Jiacheng. Jiacheng brought some RL to this project. I brought a little bit of image generation background, and Armin has done some super cool work on image gen. Definitely look him up. But this is an idea that I feel like I contributed to some, where basically it's like, okay, models can generate good images, but you can really get a good image if you have a very good model generate an image with a very complicated prompt, and then basically interrogate a state-of-the-art visual language model whether the image is right. And force an image editing model to keep fixing it until everything's right, and then that's your good image. And we could even do that to generate subtle variations of the image that were bad. This is all real, by the way, or like all actual synthetic images that were generated by a model. Like, this is the correct one, and then we could, with the VLM in the loop, target, edit, confirm that all of these were generated properly, right? And I feel like this goes back to some of the dataset pruning ideas where we are filtering our synthetic data, right? There were 10 images maybe generated for every one of these images that you actually see, but you're only seeing like 10% of them because the other ones were killed in the filtering. They failed the VQA, so they were edited. Or maybe they fail all these steps and eventually the model gives up and says, this is too hard, I can't do this right now. So I don't know if anyone's doing the kind of dataset pruning that some people have done at times, but I think some of the core principles survive because everyone uses synthetic data now, and you want to use the best kind of synthetic data, which almost always involves filtering, which is, functionally pruning your synthetic set. I also think it's important to prune real sets when you have samples that would teach your model things you don't like. But hopefully you can imagine what some of that would be. Ravi, thank you, will do. Sams, if you were an undergrad graduating in 26, would you want to do a PhD? Yes, I think I would. I think it's very hard to say whether we're on the verge of like continuing to accelerate and then hitting truly like the greatest revolution in history, or if we're on the verge of bust. I tend to think more the former, but at the same time, there are things that make me worry about the latter. I'll give an example. I have lots of friends and coworkers that'll say things like, I have a 100 agent swarm running at my house, and it's as if I have 10,000 developers. And I'm sitting there like, okay, well, I grew up looking at 10,000 developer companies and they had billions of revenue. How much revenue do you have with your 10,000 developers? You know what I mean? It's a bit like in the past when software would disrupt, nobody was like Paul Revere riding through the town yelling, the British are coming, the British are coming. It would be more like you would know things were disrupted because you look and they're disrupted. And now there's so much prognosticating, and sometimes you look and there's things and it's like, I know in my own work, like I said, I'll watch TV, I'll shoot things to the agent that would take me days to do, and it'll do them. And I'll be like, wow, I can't believe this happened while I'm watching HBO's The Pit. You know, I've never used VLLM in my life, and I just sped up my generation pipeline 2.5x in 10 minutes using 25% of my brain. And not even using the right tool, by the way. This is me like in my browser chatbot because I'm just chilling. So I don't know. I really don't know. But the reason I say I would do the PhD is because in the case of Bust, I think the reason to do the PhD is kind of obvious. Personally, I still think the research is very good. I tend to be a physicalist, so I think we can model the brains. And I think that even without modeling them, we were making progress towards many useful things before all these latest things. And so I'm passionate about the research, and that's just what I do. So in the Bust case, hopefully it kind of sells itself. Let me know if it doesn't. I can try to give some reasons to do it in the Bust case. In the Boom case, you know, boom could mean human extinction, right? Like, even not boom could mean human extinction. Like, not to get too political, but Russia has a dead hand. What if a crazy person, like, I shouldn't talk about that too much because I don't know, it could get demonetized, but there are so many things that could end the world. Sometimes I feel very lucky that the world's not ended. And so when I say, so I might say like, oh, AI could end the world, and you'd be like, well, why would you work on it? It's like, well, I mean, I think a lot of things could end the world. I think not AI could end the world. Like not doing it, stopping. I think if you're saying, Matt, what's more likely to make the world extinct? Personally, I think stopping this research is more likely to go that way, based on the broad spectrum of problems that face the world. So that's my short answer to that. But in the Boom case, I think that the PhD would give you the highest chance of knowing or being able to do anything useful in whatever the next phase of the boom looks like. Certainly, you could get some credentials that will let you do something with undergrad, but I think your average PhD is still going to place you in the best environment to give you the mentorship to be able to do the first tier, the top tier first class research. And if you don't do that, you're simply betting on yourself to be able to reconstruct that all on your own. And I think that's very hard. It's also a networking problem. Unless you come from an elite background. I didn't. I went to a school where my senior year there was like a stabbing and one of my classmates died. Like I went to a dangerous school. I went to a very like low tier high school. So I didn't have like a network existing going into my undergrad, and my undergrad wasn't a top tier undergrad. If you went to a top tier undergrad and you already did research, you might already have a network, and maybe you don't need that part of PhD. You just need the mentorship, or maybe you don't care about the mentorship, so just skip it. But for the average person that's like, I want to do ML research, Matt, get a PhD, even in 2026. That's my take. Let's see. Muli, not relevant to research, but I noticed a lot of successful, not buzzword-based startup companies in AI are founded by researchers, PhDs. What's your opinion on this trend? Yeah, they're going to be founded by researchers and PhDs because to have a successful startup, you need to solve a hard problem, and the PhD is about learning to solve hard problems. And also, to get money as a founder, you need credibility, and a PhD is instant credibility, and a PhD from Carnegie Mellon or Berkeley or Stanford or MIT is like leagues above instant credibility, right? So that's why you'll see that a lot. Rob, what is the state in world models in research? I feel more and more is now in private companies like in LLMs. Everybody tries to solve the same problem but closed. Yeah, Rob, I think, okay, so world models, let's allow me for a moment to do something crazy and just pretend that world models are text to video generation. Let me pretend. I know they're not. When I think of world model, I think about like action condition, future state prediction somehow, right? Not JPA obviously, but something. But let's just use this as a proxy. Allow me to use it as a proxy, and let's go to the text to video leaderboard, and let's scroll until we find an open weights tag. Boom, 34. I can scroll past 33 proprietary models before I get to the first open weights. So I agree with you, Rob, 100%. More and more is, if not private, closed. And we can even look private. Yeah, Kling, Seed, Alibaba, Minimax, Google, Open, like these are, I mean, they might be publicly traded, but it's totally closed source, right? It's a bummer because a lot of us are just guessing at what the other ones are doing. And I'll speak for us because, like, this is what I'm trying to do right now, to be clear. I am trying to get on this leaderboard. That's my job. And a lot of it is guessing at what these other places do. A lot of it is looking at some of the best of the open source as a starting point, right? So I don't know how far I have to scroll to find them, but there we go, Honyuan, right? You would look at the Honyuan, or you would look at the WAN from Alibaba or from Tencent, and those are like your starting point, right? Or LTX. LTX is huge lately, right? But like, so a lot of these are probably going to update on the LTX because some of them were probably still using old VAE, right? But the LTX VAE is awesome, so they're going to use that VAE. Maybe some of these places will update from tricks from the Honyuan, but it's almost like all of us are just building on what we know, which is whatever was the last open thing. So older stuff, it would be DIT. Newer stuff, it's this, right? And then just kind of guessing. And I think from talking to a lot of people, I think we're all trying to build just faster things. I think most of us believe in per pixel scaling, kind of, or per video scaling. And so it's like, how can we process more videos, right? Without revealing any competitive advantage. I'm speaking vaguely. Granted, where I work, we're going to open source a lot of what we do. Our technical report, hopefully, at least that's what the current mission of where I work is to publish a ton of it and open source a ton of it. Will the final world model be open source? Probably not. Will the text to video be open source? We hope so. Because it's a university lab, right? I think I'm fine to say this. Hopefully I'm not. If I'm not, hopefully they're nice to me if they see the video. I'm pretty sure I can say this. Like, I work for a university lab with a very public mission statement. We can even go to their website and see the models, right? Like, you know, I don't want to dox the address, even though you could just look it up. But like, you know, this is the landing page. It's pioneering academic research, right? The point is that we want to be more open, but a lot of it is just trying to guess at stuff that's closed, and that's really hard. And it gets really hard because when we're talking about world model, most of us mean robotics. And that's like, even when robotics isn't closed source, it might as well be. Like, if you work in robotics, have you ever tried to replicate someone else's paper? That's impossible. I've seen students waste months trying to replicate, like, people they know their papers just in a different lab with a different physical setup. So yeah, I feel like the gap is growing, and the nice thing is that we're competing, you know, because competition breeds some innovation. But the sad thing is we're not collaborating, and so the competition breeds innovation, but the innovation isn't shared, and so there's a lot of duplication, and it's a bit yucky. Okay, so all this auto research stuff feels very demoralizing. This auto research stuff is, I should be careful because I'm wrong about a lot of things. Auto research seems, I don't know. Auto research is counting on a future model that is better. There will be a future model that's better. I can guarantee that. I don't know how much better it'll be and in what ways. Current auto research is almost certainly doomed, but in a pointless way. There will be a better model, so it's very hard for me to comment on what it'll look like to wrap auto research around a more competent model, right? But existing models struggle, even very frontier models will struggle a bit with taste, which is very important in research. And they will still, in my opinion, struggle when they get to the actual edge. Even when I throw tokens at the fanciest stuff I can get on the highest paid tiers, sometimes it feels brilliant, and sometimes it just misses. And it is nice with auto research, this idea that we can throw, you know, a number to beat at it. But the problem is, like, we've known for a long time, like, if all you had to do was optimize the perplexity in LLMs, then we'd still all just be pre-training forever, right? But there's like a million things you have to optimize. Benchmaxing is different from not benchmaxing. There's actually like hundreds of metrics, and there's so much that goes into balancing that from start to finish. And a lot of what the current auto research at least seems capable to me of doing is mostly and it's actually a useful thing. It's like all of the little things that could take an idea from like a good idea with bad numbers to a good idea with bad numbers to a good idea with good numbers. Maybe that's its space. But at least for now, I personally think that the core creative loop is still 90% the domain of the human, where the LLM can give you the good feedback, but when you choose to let the LLM just spin on its own, you're mostly just donating money to Sam Altman. Like I said, that is not going to be an equally true statement a month from now, but I think it's somewhat true for now. Research is bought by millions of salaries getting talent from competitors. Would really love to see the open source community thrive on this. Been really fascinated by Karpathy's idea. Yeah, the ideas are definitely fascinating, and I think I'm very reluctant to dismiss them because I remember being dismissive of vibe coding at first. But I think overall it was actually obviously a very, very good idea and also a good way to wrap the idea. At the same time, he throws out a lot of ideas, and I think some of them aren't as good, right? Like I don't think Code 3.0 was a very good idea, personally. I don't think we'll ever see any form of it come to fruition. And for me, it was the flavor of the idea was somebody that had not been in the genuine software loop for a really long time, sort of missing the mark on a lot of what like modern software development was. But auto research, I think, really puts him in his wheelhouse. And I think ultimately that kind of idea is like sort of in the same space as vibe coding. I think vibe coding is also his wheelhouse, right? He has stood up amazing code repositories over time. He knows that space. He knows what goes into that. And so I was dismissive at first, but I think it's proven to be an idea that empowers a lot of people to build a lot of things. And as I've learned how to do it, saves me a lot of time, right? Time will tell with all these things. He mentioned a new podcast, the idea of having auto research agents verifying results in a blockchain. Yeah, that's interesting. Auto research agents verifying results in a blockchain. I would love to see blockchain be used for something other than like hiding bad money. See, it's cool technology, but as with a lot of cool technology, some of the applications are bad. Like I would love to see video gen used not for slop, right? I would like to see quantum computing used not to break security. But it seems like it's so easy to do bad things. Yeah, maybe I will watch the new podcast episode. For me, it's a matter of like getting over yeah. I should just suck it up and watch it. I don't want to say everything that I think about it, but you're right that I should I need to keep a close handle on the auto research trend because it could be a really cool thing that really accelerates the rate at which we as humans solve problems that matter or have problems solved for us, I guess, if you believe in the overarching grand vision, which I don't know. I think we're still at the very start, and I don't know how far we'll go. It seems like MP's UI has insane budget. I shouldn't comment on their budget. I think. I don't know. I don't know what I can say. I need to learn what I can say, especially if I'm going live. They got some cool profs though, and I love the people I work with at the lab. I think they're awesome. We do not get AGI by random guessing parameters. Benjo Schmidhuber. Yeah, exactly. And current auto research feels like that. But the problem is current auto research is like Karpathy shower thoughts. And some Karpathy shower thoughts will be really cool once they've had a few months of churn in the world, right? And then some of them you'll look back and just kind of cringe. Time will tell. What do you think about auto research? I answered what I think about auto research just now, again, kind of. Like, current auto research to me seems like it's still not good enough to do what is, I think, the dumbest part of research, which I'll say what I think the dumbest part of research is with an example, with a paper that I really like. Whether you think that just image transformers, gosh dang it. Let denoising models denoise. How about that? Let denoising generative models denoise. Boom. Back to basics. Okay. So I think this part of this paper, top right, awesome. Super cool. Very neat idea. I had been wanting to see this for a long time. I couldn't figure out how to make it work. They did. Well, part of making this work is we are going to, where do they define the T-shift in the math? Do they even really put it in the math clearly? I don't think this is the T-shift here. This is just the basic solver. Where's the T-shift? Maybe they don't even explain it till they get down to the performance. Basically, to make this paper work, you have to shift the noise level. by doing an adjustment in the t-sampler. You just do a subtraction. Like that's what a shift is, right? It's an addition or subtraction. You just add negative 0.8 and it does -6 FID, right? Are we convinced by this paper if we don't see, where's the number? Help, help, right here. Are we convinced by this paper if we don't see these numbers? I don't think so. But do we see these numbers without this? I don't think so. Does auto research do this yet? I don't think so. This, though, is what I'm hoping it can do soon. But until it can do this, it feels like I'm almost more inclined to let other people spend their time on it, and I'll catch up in a month. But at the same time, I'm a little worried because, like, maybe if I put a lot of time into that now, I would be ahead, right? So it's hard. Like, if you're bullish on it, I'd say get on it, like, now and figure out how to make it do this. But until it does this, it's obviously useless. Okay. Hey, bro, can you guide me? How can I crack jobs easily? I'm preparing for machine learning engineering. I'd say watch my video on preparing for the interview. I think the primary thing that you need is a mindset shift, probably. Unless you have a perfect mindset now. But, like, the interviewer is looking for good reasons to hire you and bad reasons to reject you. Every question that they ask you, like, so many people do this and it's crazy to me. I ask a question, they give an answer that is obviously a guess. They know they don't know, they're guessing. What are you hoping to accomplish with a guess? When you guess wrong, it sends a very bad signal. And if you guess right, in many cases, that's not the strong signal. Like, the strong signal is an answer that maybe even takes me past the question, right? It's often better to say, I don't know, if you're genuinely guessing, or if you are guessing, at least say out loud that you're guessing. I feel in almost every case, that's better than pretending you're not guessing and saying something stupid, because that'll take it from an interview that's going so well to they confidently say something dumb. I poke at it, they double down, and I'm like, well, sorry, that's a reject. So that's the first thing, like, shift the mindset. And that also means that when they're asking about your research, like, don't take it personally. You should pitch your research well when you talk about it, right? They've never seen it. You want to convince them it's good. At the same time, they might believe that there's a weakness, and you doubling down and trying to prove that that's a weakness is like arguing with R2. You're not going to change their mind. They're just going to decide you're stupid. So it's okay to meet them at where they are and to try to prove to them that you can think on the level that they're expecting you to think. If they're pointing out that weakness, then instead of arguing that that's not a weakness, you point out the thing that you should or could have done to fix it, right? And when they're asking, or when they're talking about their projects, and when they're asking you questions about that, you should hopefully be able to proactively suggest things that show that you can think past the word that was just said to you, right? That's what they're looking for. Are you creative? Do you solve problems? How can you demonstrate that in the way that you answer not just the coding question, but all of the fundamentals questions and the research questions? I feel you, haha. Applying directly auto research feels like a good idea, but most of the people copying the exact thing missing that this is a very high level of Carpathy. Yeah. Very high level of Carpathy. And I do feel like it's kind of a fun title. Like, you can make fun of him as thought leader, right? You can point at some of the L's, and maybe some of them are unresolved, but personally, I consider vision-based self-driving to be a huge L. I think it continues to set Tesla back years because they could have been putting the sensors in the cars since for a while, and they could have just bit the bullet even when the sensors are more expensive. They could be retrofitting them in the shops, like, and that I feel would immediately upgrade capabilities in massive ways. But they're still doubled down, right? Vision only. But there are undeniable wins in his track record as well, and a huge track record of bringing people into ML and helping to educate people, right? And so I think it's very dangerous to shy away from some of the cringier things that he might say. And it's also very dangerous to dismiss something just because, like, I don't know, if we go to auto research in the repo, right? It's very dangerous to dismiss it just because, like, the last things are seed hacks, right? If we zoom in, I'm pretty sure. It's been a minute since I looked, but, like, yeah, just changing the rope base frequency, increasing it. Like, that's not really a good idea in general if you know rope. And then changing the random seed, like, okay, like, there you go, just hacking the obvious stuff. At the same time, this might be the thing you do when your paper's on the threshold. So that's kind of neat. But really, it needs to do an earlier thing. And then, the other way you can go around with Carpathy, though, is I have a friend who his boss is like, he's not an ML guy, but his boss is like, hey, that auto research, we should try that. And I told him, like, yeah, like, you can maybe do this in SageMaker and be like, oh, wow, that'd be like $3,000. And I'm like, okay, if $3,000 sounds like a big amount of money to you or your team, do not touch this shit with the 10-foot pole. That's crazy. Like, so I think there's a danger, like with vibe coding, especially I feel Carpathy kind of mainstream, and some people end up touching his ideas that just shouldn't have ever seen them in the first place. The budget thing was just meant to be illustrative. Obviously, having a budget doesn't mean you shouldn't see his ideas, but I hope you get what I mean. Like, people that just don't know the first thing are coming into contact with, like, stuff that's still cooking. Okay. Like, I'm learning ML, but there's too much algorithm and all, and I'm confused, like, I'm learning, but still, and can you suggest me some projects? Yeah. So, first off, just make sure you've gone through, like, that CS229. Also, like, 3 Blue 1 Brown has a really good series on linear algebra. I think there's a really good series on, like, ML. I think that can get you a lot of the way in terms of, like, familiarity. PyTorch has lots of tutorials. I'm going to see if I can find the right tab, but, like, one of those tutorials would be learning PyTorch with examples. Is this the right one? I want to find a good example. NLP from scratch, maybe? Yeah, like character RNN. And they can give you all the code, but like maybe something you do is you go through the code tutorial, and then you go and you delete all the code and you fill it back in from, off the dome, right? And then see what you miss. These are ways that you can work on learning some of the algorithms maybe that you're having trouble keeping up here where they belong. So that's what I'd suggest. In terms of projects, I would say until you feel like you're comfortable with the core algorithms, find them in code, maybe even learn them by copying, and then learn them by deleting and repopulating. And then to really know that you've learned them, go to a paper and re-implement it from the paper, right? Never see the code. That's when you'll know that you really got it. Find something you like, re-implement it. Like take UNet, for example, like go to the original SD paper and write your own little UNet. Download the 50,000 CIFAR images, go into Colab, and train your tiny, like, 3-block UNet to generate images in the 32 by 32 CIFAR pixel space. Then you know diffusion, right? Write the sampler. Write the UNet architecture. Then you know diffusion sampler. Then you know CNN. You don't want to write, like, the fancy diffusion sampler? Write an Euler solver, right? It's just like plus minus t with alpha. Easy peasy. So that's what I'd recommend. Hi, thanks for making these videos. As a third-year PhD who wants to change from stats into probabilistic deep learning to LLM-focused research, would you suggest completely changing the program? Third-year PhD is deep for a pivot, but it depends. At the same time, stats and probabilistic deep learning is like just barely a step away from LLM-focused research, right? I would almost say, though, like there's a lot of stuff you can do in LLM that is stats and probabilistic, right? So is that like a full pivot? I don't know. It's definitely a good time to take whatever you're doing, though, and try to take it to the LLM, right? So I suppose it depends on what you mean. If you mean take your existing background and apply it to LLM, yes. If you mean ditch it and start doing like little LLM benchmarks or like I have my server to like train the agent, like no. Take your current background to the LLM. That's what we do in Vision too, right? Like a lot of us did encoders, and it's like, well, what do we do now? We do multimodal, which means plug my encoder into an LLM. Personally, do you think people should try industry/lab work before getting a PhD? No. The reason is, for most of us, well, for a lot of people, making that money and then seeing everything that's in front of you, you probably wouldn't want to go get the PhD. It's a big gap. And then the other reason is, I think to get a job as good as like barely off top tier PhD, you would need a resume good enough to get you into top tier PhD. That's a little less true right this very instant because of funding gaps. Funding gaps mean that maybe until the situation smooths, for some people with perfect profile and connections that can get top lab positions, it's a good time. But should you go to random Amazon team instead of UNC Chapel Hill? I'd say UNC Chapel Hill, personally. Hopefully that makes it concrete. Yeah, if you want to continue at R&D, the PhD like directly keeps you on that path. Whereas in industry, you are always at the mercy of the broader direction of the team. I can give an example of my own career. I go to TikTok to do public facing open source research, and I do that for a bit. Manager gets poached, new manager, like, you're doing product now, right? For me, I have a PhD. Lots of people that have PhDs do product research. I don't want to. I want to do more like foundational stuff. So I leave. I take my credential and I go. I take the work I did and I leave. But for you, if you're just taking your undergrad, how much can you leave versus how much is this one of the only opportunities you could have gotten, right? And so I think the PhD gives you that like portable credential and also portable know-how. It's both. To be clear, you learn a lot in a PhD, and that is part of the value as well. Oh, okay, so sorry. I'm being a little too practical. More on the not just practical, you learn to do research in a PhD. If you're a good researcher now, you will be a much better researcher 5 years after a PhD. In my opinion, much more so than had you simply stayed in the industry, unless you're already knocking on the door of like OpenAI, Anthropic, and they're saying, come on in, right? In that case, maybe you're just fine going industry. But that's my rough take. And if you're an AI pessimist, do the PhD, right? Don't go to OpenAI if you think they're running out of money in 1 year. Obviously. Hopefully that's obvious. That's a bad idea. You would make that bet if you're like, we're going to the moon and I'm ready and I want to be on the takeoff. To extend my question, or do you suggest other alternative ways to break into LLM, reasoning, etc. research? You're a third-year PhD with stats, probabilistic deep learning. I think you're already in a great place to break into LLMs. LLMs are probabilistic engines, basically. Sample tokens based on probabilities. When you add lots of layers of nonlinearity and all kinds of attention and lots of data to that, you start to get interactions that are very interesting and unique. And sometimes with the RL, you even feel like you're generalizing out of domain, which is crazy. But still, the backbone of that and the backbone of all the cool stuff is stats and probability and math. So that's great background to bring to LLMs. I suppose the main thing you'd be looking for is, I'm not sure if you're saying you're in a program that's just like so far from CS, but I would say the main thing is to look for collaborators, and hopefully your advisor can support you in this, but look for collaborators in CS. And I'm less familiar with Germany, so maybe, does third year PhD in Germany mean you're like fifth year grad student? Hopefully that would mean you have some credibility because you've done some work. And so maybe you barely even need your advisor's help to get some of those collaborations with the NLP first folks. But that would be your sweet spot. Some of these NLP people that do the LLMs are in the back of their mind like, man, I wish I had someone maybe with a little bit more of like stat specific expertise. And so you might find it would bear a lot of fruit if within university you simply look for those collaborations. Hopefully that's a more grounded answer that helps you. AI Research 10 or AL Research 10. I don't know. There is no industry in AI without a PhD. I know people that are in industry AI researchers, bachelors, but it's very important, and some of them unfortunately are not aware of the privilege. And the industry does not exist without PhDs. That's true. PhDs kind of make the industry, but sometimes people with very, very good profiles can get decent positions without the PhD. I think personally, I love my PhD so much. I think everybody that wants to do research would be better off with one, but I can't simply say you can't because I've seen it. Like I know scikit-learn, and I'm currently in 2-year, and I'm thinking to learn PyTorch, but I can't find a good channel. Where can I learn it in an easy way? We're looking at it. It's on the screen. It's on the screen right here. Boom. Getting started with PyTorch, learning PyTorch, all this stuff. That's how you learn PyTorch. Like I said, originally you'll be reading and copy pasting. Once you feel like you understand it, delete all the fill in and implement it from your memory. And just keep going. And once you feel like you've got a good handle on this, instead of starting here, go to a paper and start with paper. That's how you'll get it down. Maybe at some point I'll do some PyTorch tutorials, or I'll like grab some of these and show you what I mean. That could be an interesting video. I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. Do you think the field ODAR, sorry, Widmark, you'll need to maybe rewrite that question. Do you think the field of autonomous vehicles is a good field to get into? Yeah. Everything's volatile. Waymo seems to be doing well from the outside. Tesla seems to be doing well. Cruise shut down, right? But like, what's it called? What's the one where you're looking at each other? Crap, I should remember this top of mind. I've sat in one before. Someone help me. they're starting to have cars somewhere this summer, I think. Oh, Zoox. Like they seem to be doing well. Their money has lasted them at least to the point where they'll get cars on the road. I think it's great to get into. Personally, that's one of the technologies I'm the most excited for. Like humans are killing in the US more and more people every year because we're so bad at driving and we are so reckless and we have such wanton disregard for the value of life, that people are looking at the phone constantly. I am so excited for that tech. And I think, you know, unfortunately, the rollout of it makes me think there is still just so much more effort needed in coding and learning the rules. And maybe even the future looks like you're granted the long distance highways kind of okay, but getting to a new city might look like parking for a minute, downloading whatever the new city is, right? Tesla would obviously love for it to be seamless. I just don't know if that's going to work soon enough. But that being said, like Waymo is, I believe, at 1.7 humans per car, meaning the car has no driver in it, but an average of almost two people are actively monitoring every car at all times. That's what I think I read lately. So there's a ton of work left to do there. And I would bet that 5 years from now, unless we have like a singularity style takeoff, I bet that in 5 years, you could do a PhD, finish a PhD, and still find great work doing bleeding edge stuff in some version of autonomous driving. Hopefully by then, the majority of our vehicles are already autonomous, and you're just looking at trying to slash fatalities, from some hilariously low number to some hilariously even lower number. But I imagine it still exists. Um, Man, I wish I had a collaborator who knows stat. See, exactly. Do you see what Sam's is saying? Hey, if you're still in the chat, AI Research 10, look at what Sam said, right? I often find myself wishing I have collaborators that are better at math. And some people will sit there being like, I wish I had someone who's better at stat. So you need to talk to more people. If you're at a good PhD program with good LLM PhDs anywhere at the university, you got to talk to them. Talk to the students, talk to postdocs, talk to professors. Best is in person. Second best is over email with your advisor in the loop. Third best is just you over email. But like, you should be able to talk to these people in person. Just put on the bravest face and bring them some beer or something. I don't know. Do something social and friendly. How do you get your girlfriend? How did you get your girlfriend? So I got my now wife, met her on a blind date, getting closer to 10 years ago. It's been a minute. I look decent, but every girl I talk to thinks I am crazy. Well, I can't comment on why they think you're crazy, so it's really hard to say. Maybe if they're telling you why or in what ways they think you're crazy, just tone it down. Or like if the ways they think you're crazy sort of revolve around research, a lot of people that I observe in this field do tend to pair off with people that are also in the field. My wife is not an AI, but a lot of my coworkers do end up being with people that are in AI or maybe in like other STEM oriented PhDs. So it depends on the kind of crazy, I guess. Like if you're saying crazy like you're a misogynist, I'd say stop being a misogynist. But if you're saying crazy like you're so obsessed with your work, find someone who's so obsessed with your work, right? And faculty, like very, very accomplished people make crazy stuff work. Like I know people that have kids in different continents. Like one person works at a school in China, one person works at a school in the US, and the kids like live one in China, one here. Like people make crazy stuff work. So you just got to find a person that's like you're kind of crazy. They do not get my euphoria about the future, haha, like CV and stuff. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a matching problem, right? There's way more men in the field than women. Unfortunately, that's my audience. I think is like 99% men, which that bothers me a lot because the field isn't even that skewed. So I'm like, what am I doing? I kind of blame the algorithm. Like, I feel like the algorithm is going to kind of squish things and always kind of like, if there's a bias, the algorithm will explode it. But I am always thinking, like, what am I doing to like signal that like this is masculine content? I'm not trying. So I'm always thinking about like, how can I fix that? But so there's a sampling problem. Um, yeah, I would say you're definitely going to have an easier time meeting them in your real life though than online for sure. Or if it's online, it would be in like AI spaces, right? Like Blue Sky or Twitter. Twitter. I know of people that meet spouses on Twitter, right? Um, because yeah, that's the sort of match you're looking for is someone who's your kind of crazy, probably on average, right? Like my wife aids and abets my crazy, even though she's not like in on it, right? But I don't think that's typical. So more typical would be someone IRL at job, at conference, at school, stuff like that. It is your big frontal cortex. Yeah, God. Surprisingly, NLP folk are already overwhelmed with collaborators. Also, just kind of hard to set up a project as one. They are reluctant to suggest directions. Two original ideas, three too busy. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things underneath what you're saying. Unfortunately, AI Research 10, like without seeing your CV, you may not have the strongest background in the first place, which just means you're coming at it from an angle where you have less leverage. But that also means, maybe you're saying this is coming from the students, but I think that just means try to lower your entry point a bit. Like if before you target faculty, now target postdoc. If before you target postdoc, now target PhD. If you can't even get traction with PhD, I would say try to improve social skills a little bit. Because if you cast a wide enough net over enough PhD students, you should be able to find somebody who likes you enough and has little enough of their own going on to where they're willing to try to make something work. I'd also say try to have ideas, right? Like put in the time on your own to try to figure out like what you think, like what is the thing that you think might be missing in cutting edge LLM when it comes to stats or probability. I mean, it feels weird saying that because the whole thing basically is probability and stats, but I assume that you mean you're coming at it more from like a traditional statistics background, right? But still, lots of opportunity. That being said, you could also pivot in different directions, right? Like human-computer interaction has a qualitative axis and a quantitative axis. And with a good stats background, you maybe bring a lot to the table on the quantitative axis. And so maybe where you really need to be looking are like the human-computer interaction folks that study LLMs. And you bring some really nice statistical background to that. And so maybe you just need to look to a different side of the LLM. Maybe you're not going to get into the really foundational research, but maybe you'll get into the human interaction, the trust and safety side, which most groups are still hiring that. And in my perfect AI vision, these groups continue to hire that forever, right? It remains a critical part. I think alignment is a silly word because it got destroyed by morons, but like you want to keep, we want these models to help. We don't want them to hurt. Already they hurt. Like they generate things that aren't true and they get disseminated broadly and people believe things that are garbage. That's bad. So super important stuff in trust and safety. And maybe your stats background makes you very well suited for that sort of thing. With learning PyTorch, what skills can I learn more? I don't know. Like, what do you not know? If I show you this, like if we look at the quick start, like without even looking, can you tell me what the init of a data loader looks like? Can you write a data loader constructor? If not, I would say just like go through these tutorials one at a time until you could tell them to me from memory, basically. Like, but if you already know all this initial stuff, then like I said, just go to some of the little projects they have, the little self-contained projects. I don't know what you need to know more because I just don't know personally where you're already at, right? But like all this stuff, if you saw anything in any of these, if you feel like you know PyTorch, all of this should be pretty easy to you. Should you know the exact signature of like, I don't know, like replication 3D? No. I messed that one up last night. That's why I say it. It wants a tuple. It doesn't like inside convert. Like rather than taking 1 or 6 values as arguments, it just takes a tuple. You can give an int or a tuple. So when you give it the front, the back, the left, the right, the top, and the bottom, it has to be in a tuple. Like knowing that's pointless. You can always just look at the API or the LLM is generating that for you once you understand things well enough. But like you got to know what a data loader is and how it works. Eventually, you want to know how distributed parallel works. How does fully sharded data parallel work? Like what are those basic implementations? Because once you understand the basic torch, it'll be even easier to understand like the Hugging Face Accelerate or the Deep Speed or the VLLM or like the other stuff that really makes it crazy, or the sequence parallel or the context parallel or the Ulysses or all these things that take torch basics and go even deeper. Sometimes you even need to go to the kernel to understand them, right? But it depends on what you're doing. Like if you're doing basic research, you don't need to care that I just said a bunch of weird stuff necessarily. Some of it only matters when you're getting closer and closer to production or to training really big models. Yeah. Interesting. So I've been trying to keep up with all your questions. I think I just caught up, so go me. And I ran out of water. And I went live because my wife had the kids out. I hear them. I think they're back. I'm kind of inclined to go offline. Maybe I'll wrap it up. I'll say this and I'll wait a minute. If anyone asks any last questions, I'll answer this last batch of questions and then it'll be sayonara until I'll go live at 8 a.m. on Saturday next week. I think I do want to read papers still. I think I want to keep trying that. I think it's a fun format. It's also good for me because it's a time that I mark to read my own, like to do my own reading or to catch up from the week. I read papers during the week, but I read even more on the weekend. So I still like that time. But I've liked this stream too. Maybe this is something I want to do more. And I will just keep doing the bonus streams in general. Like if my wife is like, "Oh, I want to go like get my nails done with the kids," it'll be like get their nails done. It'll be like, "Great, I'll stream for an hour," right? Um, so yeah, that's kind of the plan. Favorite weekend spots in NorCal? My house. I am a homebody, Sam's. Much to my consternation, I kind of wish I liked to get out more. I like the idea of going out to some extent. Um, but I don't know. I enjoy being out in the world. Like I commute on the bus, so I walk a mile to my bus and I take a bus and then I walk a mile. Sometimes I mix it up. I'll like take a bus to a train. And so I like see the world I live in, right? But like after working all week, being up till like 2 a.m. a lot of nights, I'm tired on the weekend and like I have kids' activities to attend to on the weekend. And then do I really still want to go somewhere? So I don't know. I do want to hit up the boardwalk though, Santa Cruz over the summer, because my oldest loves roller coasters, and we didn't go last summer because we were moving. It was kind of crazy, and she wasn't quite tall enough for like some of the cool rides that she would like to do. But hopefully that becomes a spot that we hit up a couple times. I'm gonna get to have some fun on the roller coasters because they do. My kids love Santa Cruz. They think the beach is just awesome. PyTorch or TensorFlow? For me, PyTorch. Do people do TensorFlow a lot these days? I feel like a lot of the TensorFlow folks move to like JAX. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if it matters a ton either. Like to some extent, once you really learn it in the modern day, you probably learn one, and then if you ever need the other, you just ask your model to write it in the other. And when things break, you know the kinds of things that break, and so you vaguely know what to say to your agent to help fix it. Probably. Unless like I hope okay. If you're like the one CUDA guy watching this who's like you're just an idiot, Matt, like I'm not talking to you, right? Like you need to know. But to everyone else that's just using this as like scaffolding for their research ideas or for ML algorithms, like you learn one of these to have some skills, core skills that probably aren't going to matter a lot a year from now, but they'll teach you the ML and that matters. And you'll be able to read it and that matters. And it also helps you think about it, I think, a bit. Like I can think in terms of the diagram. I can also think in terms of the torch implementation, right? And both of those layers help me make my ideas, take them from abstract to concrete. I like Torch. PyTorch or JAX for me, Sam's, it's been Torch. I haven't done JAX. Yeah, Google will ask you for JAX, so they'll expect you to know their stuff, right? It used to be TensorFlow, now they like JAX. Hopefully people aren't too stingy about stuff like this going forward. It just seems so dumb. Like I said, I sat down at the TV. I don't know VLLM. It's got a lot of quirks. I'm watching HBO's The Pit, and I ask for the script. It gives it to me. That 600 line script, not the right way to generate it, by the way. I just used, like I said, I didn't want to spin up everything, so I was just in my browser with GPT, I think 5.4 in Pro Think mode, not extended think, slow think, or short think. 600 lines of code ran immediately first time, no issues. I checked the outputs, they're great. And for my use case, I know if I get the outputs right that everything's good, right? Obviously, I'm not saying you can scale a production system like this, but we're researchers. I'm not talking to you about scaling a production system. I'm talking to you about your research. I just don't know how much of all of that matters going forward. And a lot of the time, but what does matter is like, because you are going to need to optimize things. You want to make these things run quick. So you do need to know on some level the things that make things run slow so that you know what to ask the agent to change. And you also need to know how to ask the agent to find those kinds of, like, knowing the kinds of questions to ask, I think, is the big skill that scales like crazy as we move forward into this brave new world of like AI and agents that can, like, I was on the team Gary Marcus maybe 6 months ago. I have had to eat it, basically. Like, it may have been right 6 months ago. It's just not right now. I can ask the model for a lit review, and it will give me like a second or third PhD year level lit review. It might miss things, and sometimes it'll hallucinate things, and that's scary. That error rate is terrifying these days because so many of the outputs are so good that the bad ones are like reality warping. But still, it's just important to adapt and not to leave those time savings and that like performance acceleration on the table. But I really do feel like in my current role, like I had never done actual proper video gen before, really, except for like a month of tinkering. I had done some image gen, but like I've been ramping up to video gen, and I feel like I've been able to do like months worth of things in 3 weeks. Um, I know I have because I know how long it's taken me to learn this kind of thing when I've done them for projects in the past. So it's crazy. Learning with AI, is that good? I don't know. So that's the hard thing, autocode. I didn't have to learn with AI, so I don't know how to do it. I'm kind of trying to help my little brother with it a little bit, but that's a question that I really hope we get a good answer to. I know for a fact that learning, like having the AI too in the loop, makes you learn worse than someone that has no AI in the loop. We've seen enough studies to where that is definitely true. But what's the right level? Because like, yes, I think it was good that I learned assembly when I was an undergrad in CS. Um, but I obviously didn't have to continue messing around with assembly after that class that taught me some assembly. So where's the line with each skill? Hopefully we get good answers soon. I think it's an important problem. Like I've learned scikit-learn with the help of AI. Yeah, like AI can definitely help you. Like you can have it teach you things. Um, you're relying a bit on its taste, which is scary. A big part of what top professors bring to the table in their courses is taste and knowing what topics matter. And these models to some extent have like median taste by nature, right? Not like top tier taste probably. And then the model has never learned something like you learn things. It's learned things in the way it learns things, not in the way you learn things. So it doesn't have that experience of knowing that it can use to help teach you the thing. So I think it's a brave new world, I guess. Uh, it should be able to help you learn stuff. Let me know if you figure out a pattern or paradigm that works. I know that that's a thing that Carpathy thinks about a lot too. He's been thinking a lot about the education for the past couple of years. Maybe he can give us some thought leadership on, where AI meets us in the learning loop, because I think it's still something that, like, I use it to ask questions when I'm onboarding to a new problem area, right? That's kind of using it to learn, but I've never used it to like ramp up to a full like actual course's worth of material, maybe. Or who knows? I got a PhD, and so I just don't. Part of a PhD is learning to learn things fast, right? And so I might be downplaying it, right? Maybe I am learning years worth of things in a very compressed time, because that's just a thing that you learn to do as a PhD student. And, maybe I am basically already doing the right thing with the AI, just asking it the little questions here or there. Um, I don't know. Yeah, okay. I think I'm caught up with questions. I did say 1 more minute for questions, and then I sat here for 10 minutes answering questions. I'm to the end of the questions. It hurts my soul kind of to end the stream with 6 viewers and a chat that's been pretty healthy, just because it's fun. And I like talking to you guys, or you all. See, that's a thing I can do to fix my audience distribution. Stop saying you guys, maybe. I don't know. But they don't know I don't see it, because it's like I'm not getting impressions either. I don't think it's like, I think the algorithm is just serving my content exclusively to male viewers. And it's like, what did I do? It does not even match the already skewed distribution of the field. My content is like, the audience skew is even worse. It's like, how do I fix that? Anyway, thanks everyone for sticking around. Okay, I'll answer this last question, and then I'm literally going to click the thing. Also, is DSA important in Python? Is DSA important? Is DSA... I don't know what you mean by DSA. Maybe I should. Maybe I would know immediately. Oh, is that just data structure and algorithms? Yeah, you should know probably good Python practice, I guess. Um, Yeah, you're welcome, SwiftFlix. Oh, hey, have any advice on summer opportunities for students interested in research? Master student, your own university, talk to profs. That's the first thing. Second thing, industry internships. Career fair connections that maybe if you are working with a faculty lab, connections they have. If you're at a good school, just having them on the resume, that should help a bit. Tons of places have master's postings. Those are your basic opportunities. Doing a bachelor's in CS from TTU, want to do PhD after that. How hard is it getting PhD admission? You could mean a lot of things with TTU. If you mean, like, I assume you don't mean Texas Tech, but that's also an abbreviation they would use. But it really depends on, I would like you to disambiguate, because it's kind of rude of me to assume. PhD admissions in general are hard right now. Especially if you mean the TTU, I think you mean. PhD admissions are hard right now. So funding is tight in the US, which makes admissions low in the US, which pushes students out of the US, which strains the system everywhere. And then people don't get in, and then they reapply the next year, and it's kind of like a cascading problem. And admission rates everywhere are plummeting. It is so hard. Maybe staying at your university can be a good shot this time because it is typically easier if you've done good stuff in your undergrad to get into that, even more so than a program of equal tier elsewhere. At the same time, it's typically better for you to go elsewhere. So it's a tough problem. You are cooked for a top 20 PhD from like a top 50 undergrad. Are you cooked? I went from a top like 100th or worse undergrad to fringe top 10, maybe top 15 PhD personally. And I'd say, are you cooked? On average, yes. But it's doable. And I'll see people from top 50 PhD get job at top 5 lab. It's doable. Look at where you are and just try to get better. Try to climb. It's just about climbing. Life is a climb. Do your best from where you're at. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I will be live on Saturday at 8 a.m. to read some papers, and who knows when I go live during the week or weekend aside from that. 8 a.m. Pacific, Saturday. Take care. Bye for now.